Shalom Aleichem Rabbi. This is the harbinger of Hashkafa, the founder and dean of the University of Old-Time Torah Morality, who with 99% of my brain tied behind Rush Limbaugh's back just to make it fair, I can guarantee you that listening to this program for an hour will give you more Hashkafa in areas of morality and certain other areas that we'll discuss tonight than you will receive from a year of going to Aguda conventions and dinners and moisters and hearing various shmuzin, because they will not address the issues that we address here. This was my job assignment from Gedolei Yisrael. In our last get-together and our last rendezvous together, I held up letters from Rav Avigdor Miller, the Debretziner Rav. I referred to the Sharm B'Tzion B'Halacha. I held up a letter from the Kasher Rav and the Heintiges Glen Rebbe Yibod L'Chaim. But in addition to that, I had a certain amount of shimush or interchange, signatures or balpeh, encouragement from Rav Shmuel Orbach, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, Rav Avadia Yosef, Rav Ben Tzion Mitzafi, Yibod L'Chaim Tov Meruchem, Rav Michal Lefkowitz Zetzal, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, his brother-in-law Rav Yitzchak Zilberberg or Zilberstein, and many other Gedolei Yisrael. This is the day that we were hoping for. We are going to have one of the most controversial, thought-provoking, provocative as in thought-provoking programs that has ever appeared on Jewish radio or on a Jewish video. As promised, in just a few minutes, we're going to introduce to you for a very spirited conversation, Harav Hagoin, a person who I know for the better part, literally carved to 40 years when we were both broadcasters, a half of my lifetime ago, a half of his lifetime ago, and more than a half a lifetime of mine ago, when we were on, I think it was WNYM it was called, and we used to broadcast. I'm referring to Harav Hagoin, Rav David Eidenson, the Machabes Svarim, a person who was a very close Talmud, and got shimished by Rav Aaron, Rav Moshe, Rav Eliashiv, Rav Wozner, and many other Gedolei Yisrael. And we'll be talking to him about what is wrong with the get process today with divorce, Jewish divorce, and his very revolutionary idea about introducing pilegesh into the mainstream as a way of resolving the problems of agunas and people who are stuck in fruitless marriages. I don't mean fruitless in terms of having children, but I mean where there's no yachas, there's no shalom bayis, etc., etc. Before we get to Rav Eidenson, just a few notes, just a few things to take care of. Last week, or in our last adventure together, I referred to 2 weeks ago's program, I think it was in Chukas, where I discussed that there's the Shorish in the Torah. My drush, my chiddush, the Shorish in the Torah for Askanis. The first time we see Askanim, and of course the first time something is in the Torah, it makes a profound impact. It's a template, it's a prototype. And the first time we see Askanis until through the Ovis with Gedolei Yisrael, the Shiftei Kol with Gedolei Yisrael. Yosef HaTzadik was a Gadol. Moshe Amram was a Gadol Hadar. Moshe Aaron with Gedolei Yisrael. So the first time we see Askanim is by the Meraglim. The first time lay leaders of a very chashuv, distinguished caliber, the CEO Eda, Anshe Shem, chashuv people that were handpicked by Moshe Rabbeinu. And we see what happened to them. They went awry, A-W-R-Y. They went awry. They got a misa mishuna, their tongues hanging out with the bugs, with the whole business, the shrekliche things, the meraglim, they go down in history. Terrible, terrible situation. So I said then that part of the problem with these Askanim was their grasshopper complex. They said that the Anokim, meaning the non-Jews and the people who they felt that in another case of Askanis, they would have to be sycophants to chanfa, to be subservient to, etc., etc. Moshe Rabbeinu gave them a specific job, lasur sa'aretz. He didn't ask for their opinions and to be negative and to criticize HaKadosh Baruch Hu by implication when Hashem said to go into Eretz Yisrael. But this is the Askanim. They have a grasshopper concept. This is how we looked. They looked at us like grasshoppers, and we were grasshoppers. So I said, therefore, since the first case of Askanim in the Torah is negative, we have to understand there's a predetermination, almost a predilection. There is a spin. There's an orientation involved in the Bria, in the very essence, if you will, that the Askin has a bad shirish, if you will, to a certain extent. And therefore, we have to be very, very careful. And now in the Dora Basra, I taka say, with all due respect to the Askanim across the board, whether the Agudas Yisrael, Satma, Lubavitch, OU, you name it, for every single one, I will show you major Chilulei Hashem and Chesroinus, excuse the colloquialism, kissing up to lowlifes and Rishoyim, things that would have horrified the Satmar Rebbe, the Friedrich Lubavitcher Rebbes, and the Ziknei Agudas Yisrael from a door ago. They would never go for this chazavai that's going on. We are hurtling towards Gomorrah. Now, as Supreme Court is in the news, Bork said we're hurtling towards Gomorrah, meaning Sodom and Gomorrah, meaning Old Mizrav Maven Yavin. It's a double entendre. Just very briefly. So, where's the good part of all this? Where's the good shirish of Askanis? So once again, this is homiletics, this is Drush, but I think it's Karv Le'emes. I hope it's more than Karv Le'emes. The first good asking is Pinchas. Pinchas is a plebe. He's a plebeian. He's a commoner. The rest of the mishpacha became kahanim, and somehow he was left out. And he comes to his Rebbe Moshe Rabbeinu. So the question is, he tells him, Gewalt, Rebbe, you taught us a halacha, kanayim poigim boy. So instead of Moshe Rabbeinu saying, Yashikoyach, Pinchas for demanding the Rebbe, and now I'm going to take the Roimach, I'm going to do the job. Rabban shel b'nei kol b'nei agoyla, l'chol adeiris, and I'm going to set the example. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't do it. So that's question number one. Why didn't he do it? Number two, he forgot the halacha. Why did he forget the halacha? And did he remain tzibrochen that he forgot the halacha? And what's the story with Pinchas and why Pinchas was chosen to do it? So, the Mefarshim say you have to do this spontaneously. And since Moshe Rabbeinu didn't spontaneously want to do the kanois, he wasn't validly allowed to do it. Okay, there are terutzim. I'm not saying they're not terutzim. I would like to propose very briefly, before we go to our guest, I'd like to propose very briefly as follows. When you walk into the Beis Medrash today, and you say, you know what? Such and such Bezdin, they're putting such pressures on such and such younger man to give a get. And now his wife is marrying. It's a chashash mamzerim. So people will start throwing everything short of the benches at you. Shash, still, do oisvav. Du bist chaburam oretz. You're a lay person. You're a plebe. You're a commoner. How do you speak against the Rov? How do you speak against the Bezdin? How do you speak against Aguda? How do you speak against Satmar? How do you speak against Lubavitch? How do you speak against the killer? You're an upgefrekter. You're an oddball. You're an eccentric. You're a mishugener. And if you go into the same Beis Medrash and say, today Felder voted again for another Mishkav Zacha thing, that the public school should have it in like charter schools with Mishkav Zacha, with discrimination classes, with Alim and Zachen, which he has no business voting for. Shame on Felder. What do you mean Simcha Felder just got geld for yeshivas? He saved us. What are you talking about? Naguda loves him and this one loves him and that one. Bist doch an Abgefrekter. You're a Das Yochid. You're a Boydei. And you're not even a Talmud Chacham Yehuda 11. So shut your mouth. So what's the answer? Where do I take nurturing and sustenance from Pinchas? Pinchas was a commoner. Re'ei ben Putizu. Look at him. His Zayda was Mefatem. Things Savoy Zara, cows and everything else. Els the Hagonish. He wasn't even with the rest of his family to become a Kohen. He's a Gonish, and now he's Balabatim. One of the Nesiya Eda. Who does he think he is? So Moshe Rabbeinu, I would like to suggest, was stark zerbrochen. He couldn't remember the halacha. And he said, Rabbeinu Shalom, why? There's a magefa going on. Why can't I remember the halacha? When Pinchas came over to him, he had a tremendous relief. It was like taking 1 billion Alka-Seltzers in the spiritual sense. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz, instant relief. Why? Because he realized exactly what Hashem was showing, that in future Doris until the Dora Basra, people are going to go over to Yechidim who stood up against the system, whether it's in Kedushas Yisrael having to do with Inyane Yichus and Mishpacha, the uncorrupt Gittin practices, and but they didn't with a big B, which also stands for Bucks, Buckedin, and A few Yechidim are going to stand up and say the emperor has no clothes. And the same thing is going to be with morality. And people are going to shrine right and left. Where do you source? Where's your source in the Torah? Everything's in the Torah. Mordechai, Esther, Avnei by the Ramban, as we discussed. Where's your source? The source is Pinchas. If you follow the template of Pinchas, everything is gewaldic. As long as you had a Rebbe, like Rav Avigdor Miller, the Kashev Rav, the Sharm Siana Halacha, the Debrecen Rav, Rav Avram Leitner, you have Rabbeim, and they told you and they gave you Hadracha. The masses are jackasses, Chameir, and they don't understand. You can't rechen sich with them. Pinchas didn't rechen with all the masses. In the Dardeya, they didn't have any Deya. And Pinchas got Brisi Shalom, and he became a Kohen, and Moshe Rabbeinu told him, Karina Digu the Hiu Lavi Pravanka, not only because he wasn't spontaneous, he couldn't do it. Achutzim, then he understood that Pinchas has to be the first Asken Kanoi to set a template against the Meraglim with the grasshopper concept. There's such a thing as good Askonim, and if you follow what your Rebbe's taught you and you're faithful, it doesn't matter, you're not trying to win a popularity contest, and that's it. And with that introduction, I want to introduce, I can't even call him a senior colleague. It would be a big chutzpah because I don't come to his kafsula. And for close to 4 decades since I met him, when we both had radio programs way back when, almost 39 years ago, Rav David Eidenson is a tremendous Bal Halacha. He's a person who is with the very, very chashuv koilel from Yoren Sarik in Monsey, and he put out several svarim. I think it's called Hilchas Bayis Nemon. And he obtained superlative haskamas from Moshe Feinstein, from Yaakov Kamenetsky, and a tremendous smicha in Samchus, in Gittin, which Rav Elyashiv Kamat didn't trust or give to anybody else. He had Mishuna de Geshimish. So I want to say, Meirosh, you might not like, you might be offended or upset by what Rav Eidenson is going to say, but Torah v'lilmad on Nitzarech, he deserves more than an earring. He deserves gewaldige derech eretz. And I'm nobody to stick my head in between the mountains of Rabbonim and to be koveya, but I can tell you this, we have an open challenge and a request, solicitation, invitation. Anybody who wants to disagree with Rabbi Eidenson is welcome to come on to the next program we do. Contact me at rabbi11@gmail.com. We'll be happy if you have any accreditation and talk intelligently on the thing. We'll be happy to put you on, and Rabbi Eidenson will decide whether he wants to go head-to-head with you, or you'll have your say, and then we'll call Rabbi Eidenson back. We're going to believe Neder, as long as Hashem gives me the finances, which is a nest in itself, because I'm self-funding this at tremendous debt. But as long as we have the courage to continue, you see, that's a riot, that it's a good thing. If I would have plenty of money, if people would be throwing money at me, I would have to get nervous. But because it's coming with sweat equity, Pashat, Dom and Tati Mashmal, who is blood Pashat, so I know that this is a good situation, and we'll continue to work on these things until we exhaust the situation. So Rav Eidenson, Shalom Aleichem, Harav Hagay.
Thank you, Shalom. What a great honor to be on your show.
Rav Eidenson, I mentioned the statistic to you that I heard on Kol Barama radio out of Eretz Yisrael, that plays on the FM station in New York, and with spiritual serendipity, I happened to tune in when the Yid was talking, and he mentioned the statistic that there were 12,000 divorces in Eretz Yisrael in the past year, and he said 12,000 is the equivalent of the 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva that died. That means, assuming that they all got kosher gittin, or they all got gittin, there were 12,000, because gittin and kedushin is controlled by the rabbinate, whether you're religious or not. So there were close to 12,000 gittin, very close to it, over 11,500, I'm sure, in Eretz Yisrael. And that doesn't count what's going on in America, etc. Ein bayis asher ein boy mess, MESS. It's becoming, I heard myself from a woman who was married many decades, and she boldly declared, my kids want me to get divorced, and there's no problem with shidduchim because there's no more stigma in divorce. In other words, it's commonplace, and we see it all ages, people of all ages, from right after the Sheva Brachas to push it 30, 40 years or more. People are getting divorced, and they're leaving marriages with children with Eineklach, and they're going to find their happiness that they feel has avoided them for so many years. It's mamish, an epidemic of magefa. And of course, None of the moisters are really talking about it, meaning the Agudas Yisrael, the OU, the people who are supposed to take care of Klal Yisrael. We don't hear too many Rabbanim speaking about it. Now, Rosh Yeshivas, we hear very little about it in the seminaries. There's a little curriculum here or there to give a little guidance, but there's nothing that Klal Yisrael has gotten behind. So I want to ask you, Rabbi Eidenson, in the whole history of Klal Yisrael, Gittin was a Zelten Azach. Part of the reason it was a seldom utilized ritual was because financially it was very hard for a woman to make it on her own, because you've shovel beis aviyah. That's the way the Torah refers to it. There weren't independent women, businesslike. There were very few of them. Business women that were able to sustain themselves. So either you were with your husband, with your father, they didn't have a support system. So these poor women lived lives of quiet desperation, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of them over the years. But now that we're aufgeklärt, we're maskilioid, and we have degrees, and we have finances, and the poorest person in America is wealthier than many of the people who live in the shtetls in Europe, even 100 years ago. So now there's a magaf of divorce ever increasing, and there are organizations sister to sister with Ora, with Aguna Inc., with all many Sachen to give them the biggest support, to pay for their legal expenses, to encourage them to go to court. Rabbi Eidenson, what's going on?
Well, what's going on is the Mashiach that we were told by Chazal that it would be a terrible time, and we know what happened historically. The Chofetz Chaim predicted there would be a war after the First World War that would make this First World War look like child's play. Of course, he was right, and Rabbi Chonin knew exactly about that also, and he gave a lot of lectures about what's going on in the world and why what the Yid do has a lot to do with it. Because if they would be tzaddikim gevur and what the Eibishter wants, we wouldn't have such suffering, perhaps. So, but today we have a very limited amount of gedolim. As you mentioned, when I was 17 years old, I came to learn by Rabbi Aaron, and I realized there's a huge difference between me and Rabbi Aaron. So I said the only way to talk to Rabbi Aaron is if I'm near Mechitzis. There's no other way to talk to Rabbi Aaron if I'm not going to be in Mechitzis. So I went there and I told him A equals B. He says to me, it's a shach as a fish to the rock. It's A is equal to B, like a fish is equal to the wall. So that was my beginning with the bar. What did I say? Oh, you hurt my feelings? So I'm not going to come back to them? No, I said, I'm going to come back next time too. I came back next time, bam. Next time, bam. Eventually it went. And then I learned a new thing. If I'm a Mechitzis, let's do it right. So I chased him down the block. And then I started chasing him when he ate supper privately. No one bothered him except me. I bothered him. I spoke to him learning. And one day, he was visited by 3 Rabbonim, and for some reason they were all screaming at each other in Yiddish, full blast. And this went on for 10 minutes. I didn't understand one word with all the fast Yiddish. So then I noticed that they were fighting about a book. So they didn't notice me anything. So I went over and I picked up the book. And I see it's a Beisayka book. So what was the screaming about? Because the girls were doing shidduchim when they turned 18. And these books are put out when they're 17. So the girls of Nagia Bedova that they wanted, we should notice them. So they did the best job they could to be noticed, and Rabbi was furious, and the reporter was furious. So a simple way to solve this problem, I thought, was for Rabbi to tell the Shovel Shemeshvilim and Yeshiva with him, I was the youngest one, that I should close the medal at that base Yaakov and say Rabbi doesn't like it, and that's the end of it. But to scream for 10 minutes, I think they screamed when I left, they screamed more, I don't know how long. So I learned from that Rabbi was a fighter. So that to me was a tremendous finish that a person, not just busy learning at Taisis and the Rambam, but he's a fighter.
Rev Eidenson, I want to tell you a quick story, and you'll tell me. I believe this applies to answer the epidemic of Gittin, which will introduce us to our topic of tonight. In the 1980s. Under the leadership and the guidance and the encouragement of the Gedolei Yisrael, the aforementioned Gedolei Yisrael, principally Rav Victor Miller, but others as well, I became very involved in leading a struggle in New York against Mishkav Zochar legislation. And as such, at a certain point, I challenged the local city councilman who was a choshev yid. He's very choshev. He did a lot of chasadim. A Torah person. I'm telling you, on the city council, I say, hey, this the city councilman who's now a judge. I'm telling you, you can gain Yiras Shamayim by watching the way he davens. I'm serious. He davens moyerdik. He goes to Daf Yomi. He's a chashuv person, but he was a politician. He had certain ideas, certain things he shouldn't, and he didn't want to have the pressure of being on the General Welfare Committee and being the Rosh HaMedabrim against the whole Greenwich Village and all of the low-life Democratic politicians he had to make common cause with in the city council. He wanted to avoid the whole thing. So he said, Hali Taylor Rosh Thomas. So he went over to a cousin of his, the esteemed, vaunted, erstwhile Rev Nosson Sherman of Art Scroll. Rev Nosson Sherman was, I think, a relative of his. Rev Nosson Sherman says, I'll go to my Rebbe, Rev Yankov Kamenetsky, and I'll ask him to give you a heta. So he goes to Rev Yankov Kamenetsky, and Rev Yankov Kamenetsky, I wasn't there, but the upshot is Rev Yankov Kamenetsky said, nee, in the darf gehen and kämpfen an gegen der Schmutz. So he had a big problem. What's he going to do? Rav Yankov didn't give him the right answer. He wasn't programmed enough. So what did he do? He went to Rabbi Cook, who today is the rabbi. He was the rabbi in Netanya for many years. And Rav Cook is a famous rabbi, not the Mizrahi rabbi, the Haredi rabbi, Rabbi Cook. I forget his first name, very famous rav. He's a rav in the Churvus synagogue now in the old city. He's a Zaken B'Yisrael. I sat behind him and I saw him crying to the Supreme Court of Israel, begging them not to continue to institute the Hashchasa parade in Yerushalayim. He's a Gor Choshev Yid and he's close to Gedol Yisrael. He went into Rav Shach, and I was on the phone years later with Rav Lezer Ginsburg, the Rosh Kollel of Mir, and the Rav Akudis Yisrael of Flatbush, and Avenue R, and Rav Lezer Ginsburg and me both heard this story from his mouth. This city councilman asked him to go to Rav Shach to try to get a heta, that he shouldn't fight it. So he said, Ali Taylor Rosh Thomas, that was his time. It's not a business. We're in Golis. Rav Shach said, you got to fight it because all of the garbage from the Gentile secular world trickles down and affects our community. He says, and we in Eretz Yisrael owe you a special thanks in America, because whatever garbage there is in America comes 10 years later or so to Eretz Yisrael. Eventually it makes its way here. So when you're doing there, you're not only stopping it for yourself, but hopefully you'll prevent it or slow it down before it comes to Eretz Yisrael. So what was Rav Shach saying? That was the Maisa. So then he had no choice. And also the fact that I held a press conference and I threatened him, Barabim, in front of the Goyish media, I'm going to run against him if he doesn't stand up and fight. And the new speaker of the city council, Peter Vallone, came to the phone to me after I ran for mayor of New York. He came to the phone with the biggest derech eretz. He said, Rabbi, what can I do for you? And I said, this councilman has to be on the General Welfare Committee and he can't avoid it. So with the shutvus of all these things, he tak afforded belatedly, but it was too late. But what's the point I'm making, Rav Heidenson? The point I'm making is, as a Yiddishach, and it's a dover pella to me. The Batei Din that preside every day, and the Rabbanim and the Mesadrei Gittin that preside every day on Gittin, and none of them have, I don't know what it is. I don't want to say the seichel, because these have the seichel, but they don't have the siyata d'shmaya to sit down, all of the Batei Din, and hold a meeting and say, Ma osa alikim lonu bazer. Like when they had a gezer against Mesitza Bapeh, Ma osa alikim lonu bazer. And they say, you know what? Maybe as a Yiddishach, maybe there's too much of a feminism that has encouraged the independence of the woman to go and to work and to do and to have and not to put up with it and everything else. And therefore, we're breaking up Jewish families. Keseda. So maybe, but they didn't say, if anything, we have to be more scrupulous now before we kowtow and we genuflect. And this kamat, not a woman, it's a zeltnovitzias 90 to 95% of times. First of all, 85% of times, according to Rabbi Herbst, or more, the women are the ones asking for the get. And 90 or 95% of the time, they get the get with some kind of a letter. So this is feminism. This is my teretz. I'd like to ask you a question. For thousands of years, we've had halachas about gittin, starting with the Torah, because of the Sefer Krisos, etc., etc. So I want to ask you a question. A woman is in a miserable marriage. She holds her husband is as a meshugana. She holds her husband doesn't give enough pandosa. She holds she doesn't get enough respect from him. She holds he's sloppy. She holds he sleeps in bed. She holds he's lazy. She holds he's mean to her. He doesn't talk with Derech Eretz. Rabbi Eidenson, why shouldn't this lady have a chance at happiness in life? It says, if there's Hashem b'simcha, tachas Hashem levadas Hashem l'kach b'simcha v'tuv leiv. She wants even a kind of mitzvah to say the rice according to many Rishonim, which is simcha. Was willst du von ihr? She's not entitled to a get. She's not a shavui.
Is she entitled to a get? So for that, we have to look at the Gemara Sanhedrin Chafal from an Aleph. The Gemara said that the Vilna Gaon brings it at the very beginning of Hilchos Kedushin, in Simon's Hafal, and then in Ebenezer. The Vilna Gaon brings the Shita there. So the Gemara says like this: there's two ways to get married. Al pi Torah. Al pi Torah, there's two ways to get married. One way is with Kedushin, and with Kedushin, there's two things. There's you have to makadosh with a ring or with a star or with the that's one way, and then if you do that, you have to also have a ksuba. So if you get married with kedushin, you have to have a kedushin and you have to have a ksuba. And if there's another way, the Gemara says, and that's pilegesh. Pilegesh doesn't have a ring, it doesn't have all these things, and it doesn't have a ksuba. It's just two people get married, and the woman is not allowed to have nus. She's with her husband, and that's it. And either one of them can leave anytime they want. But with kedushin, she is like owned by the husband. The Ramban has the Harichas. The Indian of kedushin is a kavaldik kedushin, the lady, but she's owned by the husband. So if she did that down, the Rambam says in the laws of kedushin, the first halacha is that minat Torah, if the husband gives the get without free will, the get is worthless. And if the children from the woman are remarrying without a kosher get, but with a forced get, again, if a woman has a forced get and she marries with another man and she has a child, the get is worthless. And if the get is worthless, it means her children are mamzerim. So if there's any suffix, whether or not the get is kosher, then her children are suffix mamzer, which is worse than a mamzer. A mamzer can marry a mamzeris, but a suffix mamzer can't marry a mamzeris. They can't marry a kosher Yiddish woman. So he's completely ruined. So this is that halacha. Today there's a major role of Moshe Heinemann who invites everybody, please support the organization that forces getting, and he says, look what wonderful work they've done. They've established 150 women to be free of their husbands by forcing the husband to give a get. The Rambam says their children are mamzerim. And if for some reason it's not a real vada, whatever, maybe he had a little bit of a run to a Suffolk wants to make Suffolk mamzer, he can't even marry a mamzeris. This is what we're living in, a geifa mamzerim. So when I see a geifa mamzerim, I tell everybody, today they're up on them, we're running in the wrong direction. They don't know Hilchos Gittin. They don't know Beferish the Rashba and Helix Zion, Simon 414, that if the husband wants to give a get, he can give a get. If he doesn't want to give a get, he doesn't have to give a get. And that's the vast majority of husbands, except for the very few husbands listed in the Kuf Nun Dalin in the Shulchan Aruch about marriage. Kuf Nun Dalin. There's a few cases, very rare cases. To give an example how rare it is, there's a big shiloh if a mumur mamish can be forced to give a get. I think they got if a mumur, a person doesn't believe in the Torah, if he can be forced to give a get. So in such a world, Moshe Heinemann says, hooray! Oh God, 150 women to give up his first husband with a get, and look at all the free women that there are, and they're having children, and these children are mamzerim or Suffolk mamzerim, and nobody is moicher.
So
only ones that are moicher are me and my brother. And why do I do it? Because I learned from the body to fight. But it's not just him. It's Gedalia Schwartz also. Shlomo Miller called me up once that a man came to him and said Gedalia Schwartz told him to leave his wife from a Yid with the kosher, kosher ate him everything, to then he went to Toronto, went to Shlomo Miller, and says, I'm looking to remarry. He says, were you ever married? He says, yes. Did you have a get? He said, no. You didn't have a get? The Daya Schwartz says, I don't need a get. So he calls me, Shlomo Miller calls me up, and he tells me, call it the Daya Schwartz. Find out what this business is about. You don't need a get from a derisive thing, a kosher kedusha. And they lived together a few weeks, and they woke out without a get. So I called the Daya Schwartz. He says, yeah, there was no being. Now, this says a person never learned Shulchan Aruch Hilchos Kedushin. The very beginning of Hilchos Kedushin says, marriage is chal with a ring. Just the ring is chal. And the Torah says over Farish. And there's this, and the Shulchan Aruch brings the Maisa that a woman was sitting and she saw a man, and she says, please marry me. He says, okay. He takes out a ring, and he throws it in her lap. She takes the ring and throws it on the floor. She says, I was just joking. The Shulchan Aruch passed, she said, Eishes Ish. She said, Eishes Ish. Where was the being? But Gedaliah Schwartz never saw the Shulchan Aruch. He never saw the Shulchan Aruch. And he's the senior Rav of the modern Orthodox. The senior Rav. And tells people to leave without a get. There's a whole generation of Mavzerim from Gedaliah Schwartz and from Moshe Heinemann. Moshe Heinemann, I said, what are you doing? He says, well, he once read about Rabbeinu Tam, the Rabbeinu Tam is matter. Rabbeinu Tam is matter. Rabbeinu Tam in Simon 999. It's not matter. He says another thing. It's a passive coercion that can be done, meaning you don't tell the person to give a get. You're not allowed to say that. Rabbeinu Tam holds you're not even allowed to tell the husband that it would be a good thing to give a get. You're not allowed to say that. That's Exumus Sabbath Gimel and Shitamutu Batches. You're not allowed to say it's a good thing to give a get. You're not allowed to say that. But if it's passive coercion, you don't do business with him, you don't talk to him, so that's okay. But there's a big but. Besides the fact that I say be passive, and not what Ora does to go and scream, "Say it's giving it, say it's giving it."
Wait, Rav Eidenson, we're going to pause literally for 30 seconds or less, and then we're going to just come right back for the next half an hour to continue this fascinating discussion. So please bear with me.